Hey everybody. Oh, sorry about that. My goddamn light keeps falling over. I don't really have a good stand for it. Give me a second. Oh shit. Okay, that's more like it. How's everybody doing? I'm about to cruise over to the chat. Give me 1 second. This always takes me a few seconds to get started. I know it's a real shoestring operation over here. Appreciate your patience. All right, so I'm in the chat saying hello. And we're ready to go here. Now, I didn't change the audio mix from the last time that I did this. So if there's a problem with it, if you still think it's too loud or not loud enough, or my voice sounds not good balance with the rest of the game audio, please let me know. But today, I'm going to be I'm going to be playing mostly Mortal Kombat 1, the original arcade version of Mortal Kombat 1, while I try to catch casual Twitch and YouTube viewers who are looking for streaming video games and indoctrinate them with politics and anti-war views. Might be a really silly idea, but I enjoyed the stream from a couple days ago, and I think I'm going to continue to do these. Now, I'm also realizing that I'm fairly bad at video games. Fully transparent about that. But Mortal Kombat is actually a game I used to be quite good at back when I was a teenager. Probably spent more money playing the original Mortal Kombat than any other arcade game, besides maybe Mortal Kombat 2. This was the era of video games where there were people literally lined up at arcade machines in 7-Elevens and pizza parlors, where it was some of the most organic in real life competition that I had ever witnessed when I was a child. Um, most sports, little league things are sort of very compartmentalized. They're not organic. But this was a genuinely organic phenomenon where teenagers, children from ages 10 to 15, sometimes even college age kids were getting into Mortal Kombat and just spending all of their time in these arcades, and sometimes just at arcade machines at grocery stores, but 7-Eleven, bowling alley. I mean, I even remember my friend and I got so good at Mortal Kombat 3, like right when it came out, because we had already been obsessed with Mortal Kombat 1 and 2. And my friend was just kicking these two dudes' asses at a bowling alley on Mortal Kombat 3. I mean, he was just absolutely obliterating them, like flawless victories multiple times in a row. And you could tell that they were getting upset. Now, one of the things that happens back then, because kids are dicks, they're assholes, they're babies, uh, is if you beat someone too many times in a video game, especially if you're like a smaller person and you're beating, constantly flawless victories on like a bigger person or older person, that person's going to kind of try to bully you a little bit. And that's what happened in this instance. My friend destroyed these two kids so bad on Mortal Kombat 2, he probably made them, or Mortal Kombat 3, probably made them waste about, I'd say like $5 worth of quarters on just beating him over and over again. That they started to try to sabotage his game once he kicked them off of the arcade machine by just being so good, and they started kicking his legs, trying to sweep him, like doing like Mortal Kombat style back low kick sweeps on my friend when he was playing games. So I was there having to like run interference for him and like fight off these guys so they wouldn't fuck up my friend's game, because as a point of pride and just sort of rub it in their faces, he didn't want to get off of his game because they were trying to literally knock him off his game. and he refused to do so. So I was there trying to like push these kids away, and they were like our age, and they both acted like they knew martial arts. That was another thing kids try to pull back then, is if they feel like maybe they're out of their depth or they need to like spike their fighting credentials. They'll say that they have like a black belt or something. A lot of kids used to say they had a black belt. Well, I could say with assurance that neither of these kids had any martial arts training, because we very easily kept them away from the arcade machine and continued to rub it in their faces and just like beat the game in front of them, and it was glorious. Um, so that's just an anecdote from my childhood about playing games. Um, but yeah, today I'm going to be playing the original Mortal Kombat game while I sit here and discuss serious issues with you guys, such as this still impending war with Iran, this passenger airliner that got shot down in Iran, or allegedly shot down. We don't really know what happened. A lot of the evidence is pointing to it was somehow shot down. Very strange incident. We're also getting news today that at the same time Trump assassinated or ordered the assassination of Soleimani in Iraq, that he actually was on a killing spree ordering assassinations for a lot of lesser known figures, such as, I guess, a Houthi commander in Yemen was also assassinated during that same time period. Now we're also getting kind of interesting, amusing news, which I don't, I can't take it at face value. I'm not sure what to think of it, but we're getting news saying that Trump was actually, he caved on assassinating this general because he wanted to make friends with, or wanted to get more friendly with, certain Republican senators that he was worried about that might flip on impeachment. I don't know if I can buy that scenario. That sounds very wag the dog ish to me, but more pathetic. I already said as much on Twitter. I don't know if I buy that, because we're dealing with two completely contradictory narratives here. The Republicans and all the Trump people want us to believe that this impeachment proceeding is actually doing everything to help Trump, and that he's not worried about it at all. They're not worried about it at all. It's fine. It's silly. It's just a hoax. It's a show. Blah blah blah. But then on the other hand, you get this news report from a leak inside the administration saying that Trump was actually worried about Republican senators flipping and voting for impeachment. That flies in the face of everything we're hearing from the GOP narrative in general. That's very interesting. Again, don't know if I believe it, but that's out there right now. It's being reported. And then it's also being reported again that Tucker Carlson, after a phone call with Trump, was apparently created a tipping point for Trump to cave on further retaliatory acts against Iran, specifically bombing in the country. Apparently Tucker talked Trump out of bombing the country. Both of those two stories I just mentioned to you, I'm not taking them at face value. They're weird to me. And if both of them are true, then they're also still really troublesome. I mean, if it's true that Tucker Carlson has now twice talked Trump out of bombing Iran, that's really disturbing. That a guy who said he wanted to annihilate Iran and called Iraqis primitive monkeys that need to obey is a guy who somehow managed to talk this president out of bombing Iran. I mean, if that's true, that's horrific. That we're basically depending on a former neocon employee of Bill Kristol, whose father worked for Voice of America and the Deep State, to get us out of the Iran war. I mean, that's terrifying. Because as you know, I think Tucker Carlson is part of some kind of limited hangout operation on Fox News. I can't really go into it deeper than that, but I don't trust it. So I don't take that story at face value either. It's just an interesting story that's been in the news recently. If you guys want to bring up any other topics or stories that are circulating right now before I start the first game, and I might jump to a second game at some point because I'm probably going to do this until about 3 o'clock. It's going to be a longer stream than the first one. Yeah, let me know if you have any ideas. I mean, chances are, if it's an arcade game released before the year 2000, I have it on here. There are certain games that are too processor intensive to run. Pretty much every Virtua game, besides the original Virtua Fighter, can't run on here. So that means Virtua Cop, Virtua Racing, too processor intensive to run on here. But the first Virtua Fighter does. A little bit choppy that it runs. And there's also a handful of other games that I really enjoy that won't run on here, like Narc, um, some of the later Midway games like Revolution X. Trying to think of what other ones won't run. I haven't found Smash TV and Total Carnage on here yet, which is strange. Propaganda wants to talk about nonviolent revolution. Go for it, man. Oh, sorry, I just gendered you there without realizing your gender. I need to avoid that kind of language, just because people get bothered by it. I mean, I don't really personally care, but I understand other people. It rubs other people the wrong way. Um, but yeah, talk about it. Feel free to dish it out. Tell us what ideas you have for nonviolent revolution. Do you have aliens, obnobs? Yes, I do, and that's a great suggestion. That is one of the best classic shooter arcade games I think that was out there. And in case anybody is interested in sort of the history of video games or shooters or whatever, um, Aliens was actually a game that was worked on by people that left to form the company Treasure. So there are some special Konami games from that era or after where they really stand out to me. And apparently the reason is because a lot of the people who worked on those games actually went on to form Treasure. And that's another game that fits into that category is Castlevania 4 for the Super Nintendo, which is arguably one of the best 2D side scrollers ever made. Obnobs never played Aliens. Well, that's great. I'll have to show it to you for the first time here. I mean, I'm assuming you've probably already seen it in motion, so maybe that won't be a surprise to you. Um, Someone suggested to me yesterday that this would be a more entertaining broadcast if I had a sidekick or a co-host. Can't disagree with that. Um, Most of the arcade games that I have on the system are two players. So just in terms of getting like good gameplay streaming going, that would be better. Um, but at the same time, like I don't know if actually having a sidekick to discuss politics with me, unless it was my sister, would be really that useful. Um, because a lot of the people I could probably find to play games with me, they would the politics would either go over their head, or they might not even align with mine. So I mean, it would be interesting to just invite over one of my friends who's not that political to try to have a political discussion with while we play games. I mean, I'm open to trying that at some point. Um, Thanks. Thanks. Someone said I don't need a sidekick. Give me 1 second, you guys, because I just realized I left my coffee upstairs, and it's very important for me as a caffeine addict to have access to that. So I'm going to be back in about 45 seconds. All right. So enjoy my dog if you can see her behind me while she entertains you while I do that. All right. I'll be right back. All right. Hope I didn't lose any of you guys. Sorry about that. Very unprofessional of me as a live streamer, as a soon-to-be professional Twitch streamer to do that. Apologize. Um. Ooh, no, didn't mean for it to go to this list. Um. I am a little bit nervous about scrolling through the secondary ROM list on here, on this Pandora's box, and the reason being because there are a lot of X-rated porn games apparently out there that I guess I'm imagining they were like in porno, actual like adult stores that sold like porn videos and stuff. Um, my wife and I were just kind of intrigued by how many porn games were on here, so we were trying each one by one, and basically all of them are just like puzzle games where you reveal a nude porn picture of some kind like in the background, and they're often X-rated. Propaganda, or no, Birdworld just says, please play a porn game. I would, but YouTube is bullshit, and they'll probably like ban my channel if I do that. I think they're very strict on sexual content here. They put age restrictions already on things with violence or too much swearing, and I would imagine that you would probably get instantly banned if you tried to put anything hardcore pornography. So I don't even want to do it by accident here. But rest assured, I have almost every single access to every single arcade game here made before the year 2000. So if there's anything that comes up for you that you know any ideas of games you want me to play, don't hesitate to suggest them here, and I will definitely do that. So I'm just going to read some of the rest of the questions in here before I get started with Mortal Kombat. All right, so Mortal Kombat, let's do this. I'm going to go over a little. I told you an anecdote already about my experience with Mortal Kombat. I didn't really finish the larger series of anecdotes I wanted to tell you, but I'll just say it was a very exciting time period in video games for me. It was sort of a fun time period where kids at school were making their own video game facts, like move sheets, and it was sort of the start of, I don't not the start of, but it was like a very high rumor era where half of the fatalities for the Mortal Kombat characters were basically fake on these move lists you would get. Even some of them were printed in major video game magazines, fake moves and fatalities. And what was exciting was you didn't know if these were actual real fatalities or hoaxes. And sometimes you'd be like, oh, that fatality and that move guy, that sounds like a hoax. I've never seen that. But then you would see someone pull it off in the arcade and be like, holy shit, that katana fatality where she gives you the kiss of death and you explode, that's real. And there were other fatalities that were fake. Like, I can't remember. I feel like I can't even remember them off the top of my head. But there was a lot of third fatality codes for Mortal Kombat 2. And if anybody's played Mortal Kombat 2, you know that I think that there's really only one character that has 3 fatalities, and that's Shang Tsung. Might actually be wrong about that. He might only have one. No, he has 3. Yeah, he has 3. But Mortal Kombat 1, the classic, we're going to be playing that a little bit. Just looking over the chat a little bit. Propaganda says, Robbie, what do you think about logistics for a mass occupation of all legal office in the United States? Small portion of the activists work to pay for food, housing, medical, and legal issues. I mean, I think that sounds nonviolent, and I'm not sure if you're the one who suggested nonviolent revolution, but I mean, in reality, that would unfortunately be met with a violent response from law enforcement. The last time there was any kind of mass occupation of anything was Occupy Oakland here. And I think even it culminated with Occupy protesters trying to occupy a vacant building and set up like some kind of Occupy Oakland hub there. And it got shut down very quickly. Now, I think in large numbers is when, those kinds of non-violent sort of civil disobedience protests work. Um, but in generally speaking, I mean, I don't know if I would consider that non-violent just because of the way that the police would respond to it. I mean, um, but I'm open to that idea. I mean, I think that's a good idea. I mean, all types of civil disobedience like that, I'm definitely in favor of. Francisco Raposo. No, right now I am not streaming on Twitch. I meant to set it up right before we started this broadcast, but unfortunately I couldn't figure out how to do it simultaneously with this. So I still need some tips and tricks on how to do that. I meant to broadcast this simultaneously to Periscope, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch today. Right now it's just on YouTube. So hopefully on future broadcasts, someone will walk me through how to set that all up, because I'd really like to do that. Hey, faint signals from Vega. I think that's Trisha. How's it going? I heard you could see the smoke from where you are right now from Australia, which is pretty crazy. Because I think you live in Tasmania. Last time I talked to you, so that's pretty disturbing. But at the same time, I mean, fires seem absolutely out of control there. So, I hope you're staying safe. I hope you have some kind of air mask, because even when the fires in California here were happening hundreds of miles away, after about a week straight of them, we have been completely. I mean, it's pretty much the air quality got so bad where I live that I thought I was gonna have to go to the doctor. I mean, it was pretty bad. So make sure you have a mask, Trisha. Make sure people in your family have masks. This fire is probably not going to, the smoke's not going to go away anytime soon. Propagander said, no, it has never been tried. All attempts have been small and unorganized. That's mostly true. I mean, I think from what I've heard of those kinds of civil disobedience protests you're talking about, they're usually relatively small groups. A massive demonstration in a group, yeah, that would be the way to do it. Strength in numbers, for sure. Bernie is a Hollywood gas guzzling millionaire. I mean, yeah, I mean, the thing with that is, it's like most people who talk about climate change are not like personally employing some kind of um, preservationist mindset in their own lives, So I think you can always say that about any politician, really any climate change activist. I mean, look at Leonardo DiCaprio, right? I mean, acts like he's a climate change activist. He donates all this money into it, but he's constantly doing things, and in his personal life doing things that fly in the face of his actual concern for climate change. Oh, that's what Trump sent out in an email. Okay, unbuttered toast. That's pretty funny. So that means that Trump is actually afraid of Bernie now. That's kind of interesting. I didn't realize that, so I missed that story. Make sure to clarify. I tend to just take things that people say in this chat at face value. So if you're just quoting Trump or saying something, just make sure you say what it's from, so I don't idiotically respond to it as if that's something you're saying. So I don't want to come off here like a total fucking idiot. So here we go. I know I've been talking a lot. We're doing Mortal Kombat 1 now. Let's do it. I might have to get fatality tips from you guys in the chat. I'm going to start with an easy character here. Hella easy character. I would say back in the arcade, I would consider people who only played with Sub-Zero and Scorpion as cheap. They both have paralyzing moves. So one thing I'm realizing is that on Mortal Kombat 1, they didn't add the feature of a jump kick that you can do when you jump over the person. which is kind of frustrating. So they actually added a lot of gameplay mechanics. See, watch this. If I try to jump kick over his head, I just go a straight jump kick over it. In Mortal Kombat 2, they added the beautiful gameplay mechanic of when you jump kick behind somebody, it jump kicks them. Like the character turns around and jump kicks them from behind, which I find extremely pleasurable. Let's try to do a fatality here. Ah, fuck. Oh, man, they give you such a short period of time. I remember his fatality only. Forward, forward, down, forward, high punch. That's like one of the only fatalities in the game I remember. Ah, fuckers. I remember the first time I played Mortal Kombat, I had no idea what it was. I thought it was just like a Street Fighter clone. And then Sonya Blade beat me and did her Kiss of Death fatality. And I was just like absolutely blown away. I was just like, what the fuck? You can kill each other in this game? You know, I was definitely one of those kids who was very inspired by and very impressed by the idea of doing fatalities, you know? Definitely a gimmick. And I think it sort of overshadows what's actually good about Mortal Kombat. God damn, the computer on this game is a lot harder than I remember. Either that or I'm just older and shittier. Forward, down, forward, high punch. Are you sure it's just forward, down, forward, high punch? Not forward, forward, down, forward, high punch? Yeah, actually, I know. I think you're right. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to try that. Oh, motherfuck. No! I suck, guys. You should see me play against a real human now. Well, yeah, if you're talking about like Katana, definitely Katana is a cheap character. I don't think Melina. I think Melina was actually a character that people would play as who are a little bit more pro at Mortal Kombat, because two of her special moves have really devastating counterattack potential. Like if he does the teleport kick or the roll, and you're blocking. Yeah. There it goes. Thanks, unbuttered bread or unbuttered toast. So in general, I mean, right now, I was saying this a little bit on Twitter earlier, but I am relieved that I didn't wake up the other morning to the news that we had bombed Iran. Very little amount of solace, I guess, right now in what's going on. This is always a weird, see what I'm doing right now? This is always a weird trick that the computer player in Mortal Kombat 1 would always get tricked by it. I remember when I was a kid, when I would get too frustrated with playing the game and I just wanted to win, I would just do that. I would just keep doing jump kick back and forth. And I hope I'm not going to have to resort to that this time, because that would be fucking boring to watch. Yeah, let's try that. So the original Mortal Kombat, the uppercuts are by far the most devastating special move. They take away about 25% of your life bar. Okay, that's an interesting topic. Bird World just says, what do you think about Daniel Hopsicker going after Mint Press News? Well, I think it's bullshit. I think it's really odd that Daniel Hopsicker has gotten it fixated in his mind to go after Mint Press News. Yeah. You have a good point. It says, did you go to the protests against war with Iran, Robbie, or did anyone here? Yeah, I knew people who went, but I actually didn't go myself. I am a bad activist. So just going to throw that out here is that I'm totally behind war protests. I think they're great, but I don't go to that many on the ground street protests in general. I don't know. I don't really have a good excuse or a reason why. It's just not something that I do very often, but I'm very, very encouraging of it. And I think that it's, It's great. So I hope nobody judges me for that, but yeah, I mean, I have to be honest about that. It's not. I don't typically participate in them. I think my sister and Mike Preisner much more geared towards doing that than I am. Abby is sort of a dedicated activist who gets in the streets all the time. Mike does too, and I think that what they do is fantastic. And I would never be able to do what they do. I mean, I would never be able to lead a protest, lead a march. First of all, no one would let me take the microphone anyways. So I would just be there, just kind of being a participant, part of the large mass of people. Um, and frankly, I think that I have more of an effect doing things like this. So yeah, people could call it keyboard warrioring or whatever, but I think that I'm having more of an impact um, doing what I'm doing right now, even talking to you guys, even though I'm playing Mortal Kombat. So, but the Daniel Hopsiker thing um, really bugged me because, I mean, Daniel Hopsiker in general, I'll just say, is a curmudgeon, and I don't even think he would take offense to that. He's pretty much pissed off everyone I've known in the 9/11 truth movement for one reason or another. He's very, very, very selective about who he allies up with, whose information that he takes in. But in general, Daniel Hopsiker, always tried to distance himself from the 9/11 truth movement. So this is not new for him. I think maybe he's feeling territorial or something because that guy George Webb, I guess, is working with him now, and they're sort of all over the Epstein thing. My impression is that they think Whitney maybe went too far into the Mossad connections with the Epstein thing or Israeli intelligence, but it seems more to me like it's just based around sort of being territorial, like they want to be the ones in control of that narrative for some reason. Um, and frankly, I think it's very, very odd that someone that I thought was as credible as Daniel Hopsiker, he's pissed a lot of people off in the truth movement because he will like go after and make fun of and mock people who think it's an inside job or who think the buildings were demolished. He's very aggressively against joining up with any of those people. However, uh, it's odd to me that he would be collaborating with someone like George Webb because George Webb is sort of the quintessential conspiracy clickbait grifter. Nothing that I've seen that George Webb has done or researched to me has been very credible. Um, it seems mostly in the vein of sort of conspiratorial clickbait. Uh, that was my impression of him like years ago, and it's still my impression of him. So I'm a little bit surprised to see someone like Daniel Hopsiker, who I always found to be a little bit more savvy, working with someone like George Webb. That's questionable in and of itself. Why he's chosen to ally with him, I can't say. Why he's chosen to go after Whitney specifically, I don't really have a good answer for that. And why he thinks that he's going to uncover this idea that he's gotten in his head, that somehow Mint Press News is Iranian intelligence. He's kind of bouncing back and forth to making it seem like he thinks it's a CIA front, to thinks it's some kind of Iranian front. So I'm really curious. I mean, just for my own amusement, to find out why Hopsiker thinks the CIA would have, paid me a very small fee for writing articles that are basically going after the deep state. I would be very amused to see what Hopsiker's explanation for that is. But yeah, I think it's garbage. I mean, I think Whitney does really good work. She's a thorough researcher, and she's a way more responsible researcher than George Webb is. So I just find the whole thing kind of ugly, and I hope that, um, I hope it doesn't. I don't know what I'm saying, but I just hope Hopsiker lets it go because it seems like this is kind of some personal vendetta that he's trying to sort of reverse engineer into something that like Whitney is some kind of operative or something, and it's just it's infuriating. I mean, if you're gonna snitch jack at someone, uh, unless you come out with a huge amount of convincing evidence that that person is some kind of agent or something, it does just really look bad for him, and I think it's gonna fall back on him if he does that. Um, but that's not to say that Daniel Hopsiker's 9/11 research isn't worth taking into account. He has written a great book on 9/11, and he did a pretty great documentary on it as well. And it really delves into a lot of the weirdness in Florida. Faint signals from Vega. Snitch jacket means when you accuse someone of being a snitch, meaning they're an informant for law enforcement, or they're actually an embedded agent undercover for a federal government agency. That's what a snitch jacketing means, is when you accuse someone of being that. And it can have profound and powerful effects, especially in political activist circles. There's already a lot of paranoia in activist circles. They have to be secret. They have to be clandestine sometimes. So if someone in one of those activist groups or even on the internet says, hey, this person in your midst is an agent, or they're not who they claim to be, or they're a CIA or they're Mossad, that in and of itself is a very toxic thing to do with no evidence. With evidence, it's still toxic, but if it's true, then that person should be outed. But I think that in this case, it's very evident that Hopsicker is just sort of coming out hard and strong with these claims with no actual evidence to back him up. And he's already made several missteps and just made mistakes in the facts that he thinks he's digging up. So you can see some exchange between Whitney and him on Twitter. But yeah, I'm definitely taking Whitney's side on this for sure. And also, Hopsicker bought into Russiagate, hook, line, and sinker. He really bought into that. And that was, frankly, some kind of intelligence op. I mean, that Russiagate is fake. So it does make me question his savviness in that department. Infiltration is still a real thing. We need a tool set to deal with that stuff. Fuck. It happened again, guys. This happened when I did my first stream for Mystic Warriors. I'm sorry. Yeah, that just happened. So apparently on this Pandora's box, the actual pause feature on it is not really effective. The longer I actually keep it on pause for, it looks like it's just going to glitch out and just fuck up my game. So I'm sorry about that. You know what? Let's try to do it again, though. I'm going to try to play through Mortal Kombat for you guys again. Caleb Maupin. I don't know if that's how you're spelling his name. Trisha, I am not familiar with him. So, Mike L. Somebody asked about Daniel Hopsicker's attempt to smear Whitney Webb. And as I was saying, as much as I like Hopsicker and his work and his research on 9/11, I do question his savviness when it comes to sort of current things, because he did heavily buy into Russiagate. So for me, that is a pretty big litmus test. If you really strongly bought into Russiagate, I do question your ability to analyze current events. That's why, someone like Cenk Uygur, I'll defend him from smears, just like I'll even defend Tulsi from smears of being called an Assadist and stuff like that. But ultimately, I do question his savviness and his ability to analyze things if he's getting that into Russiagate. I mean, I think it's a really bad move on his part. He lost a lot of credibility for me doing that. A Promethean. You guys are using terms I've never even heard of. I don't even know what that is. Annoying redhead with great reporting. I actually know. I mean, maybe I've seen him, but the name doesn't sound familiar. And honestly, I have not watched RT in about 2 whole years. Without mentioning anybody specifically, I mean, I think Lee Camp still does great work on the network. The Chris Hedges show is decent, but I think for the most part, RT has gone completely into the dumpster. I think that it is pretty embarrassing what they've done to the network. And I don't know why they've hired all these right-wing figures, including neocons like Steve Malzberg, to host his own show. Former Fox News reporter, CNN reporter Rick Sanchez. I don't appreciate that. And to me, it shows that RT has decided to go in a more right-wing direction, which seems weird because the president currently in power is very right-wing. So I don't understand why they've gone in that direction. I think maybe the management in RT or whoever's running those have gotten it into their heads that sort of the liberalism infecting the country or whatever is what needs to be combated against. Like they think that's more establishment or something. I don't know. I just think RT has gotten really fucking bad, and it's not really challenging in a really serious or impactful way the type of narratives that I think it used to challenge. And there's still people I like who go on there occasionally, but I think for the most part it's pretty worthless now. What's the main show propaganda? Propaganda? You say the main show is Lefty for sure. I don't know what show you're talking about. Here we go. Mortal Kombat. Let's do it.
Johnny Cage.
So, fun fact about Johnny Cage in this game. The actor, I want to say his name's Daniel Pesina, but I think I'm wrong. The actor who plays Johnny Cage in this game plays about half of the characters in Mortal Kombat. He plays Raiden, he plays Sub-Zero, he plays Scorpion. Oh, motherfucker. And he actually got fired from the Mortal Kombat franchise for appearing in a competitor's video game ad dressed as Johnny Cage from Mortal Kombat playing their game. And if you're wondering what the game is called, it's called Bloodstorm. And it was kind of it wasn't a Mortal Kombat clone exactly. It's a 2D fighting game made by an American company called Strata that also had made a game called Time Killers back in the day. That's also kind of riffing on Mortal Kombat. It doesn't have fatalities per se, but you can chop off the character's limbs. Oh, fuck. Thanks for the fatality, Unbuttered. I remember that fatality, and there's actually a glitch on that fatality where if you keep doing it, you could keep punching off the character's head. I think like 3 times. And they actually riff on that in Mortal Kombat 2. You can actually punch off the character's head multiple times with a special modification on the fatality. But what I like about the original glitch... Ah, fuck! What I like about the original glitch in this game is it keeps like flashing the fatality screen darkening color, like every time it re-glitches into knocking a new head off. You really enjoyed the shitty Mortal Kombat film. You know, I actually haven't seen that since it came out in theaters, but it is made, I think, by the same guy who made the Resident Evil movies. So I'm curious to check out how bad it is compared to my memory. I remember actually the funniest thing about the Mortal Kombat movie to me was that Ed Boon, guy who made the game and who actually does the voice of Scorpion saying "get over here" in the game, recorded new dialogue for the movie of him saying "get down here" for Scorpion. There's this terrible fight scene where Scorpion and Johnny Cage fight in Mortal Kombat the movie, where he oh fuck. What? How did that work? Oh, Killer Instinct, the game ruled this. That's like one of the best fighting games ever made. I mean, that's a classic game. It never got a proper home console release either, which is a bummer. Some of the best fighting games for arcades never got proper home console releases until like the PlayStation 1 came out. I think the first time we saw a genuine arcade quality conversion done of a fighting game was the 3DO releasing Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. That came out before the PlayStation version. That came out. Super Nintendo, of course, and Genesis already had, their own Street Fighter interpretations. But the sound, especially on the Genesis version, sucked. The graphics were a little bit lackluster on the Super Nintendo. But the Super Nintendo version of Street Fighter 2 was acceptable to most people. But what's interesting is... Oh, the glitch didn't work that time. What's interesting about the Street Fighter console versions is that they actually, if you look at them up close, like side-by-side comparison, the Super Nintendo version of Street Fighter 2 looks really shitty compared to the arcade. It's got like a far lower pixel count. Francisco Raposo, I don't really have a problem with the Zeitgeist trilogy. I think Peter Joseph's awesome. I've heard, he's a really nice guy in person. He goes really deep. He's really fun to talk to. He can kind of have a conversation about anything. But I think that I don't know. I mean, I'm not personally a fan of them in terms of their content, but I think that they probably had a positive impact. They got a lot more people to think in terms of socialism and things like that. Like they had sort of a nice underlying left-wing sort of conspiracy approach to things, and I appreciate that because for a long time, sort of the right-wing conspiracy narratives would dominate, especially internet culture. I mean, it's why Alex Jones, I think, took such a strong oppositional view to Zeitgeist, because he felt like it was sort of infringing on his territory of creating these right-wing conspiratorial narratives. So I think Peter Joseph did a fairly good public service by creating a track out there on the internet for specifically people who wanted to flirt with or get interested in more left-wing thought. Oh, man. Got my ass kicked. Mike L., the 3DO is pretty much a piece of shit. I mean, I bought one later on, like in the late 90s, just for fun, because they were on the used market. You could get them for like $50. And games were super cheap for a while. You could buy like lots of games on eBay, like 20 games for $50. I even bought a Jaguar by the time the prices went severely down for those, and I could say with 100% assurance that both systems were absolute garbage. Besides maybe 10 games on the 3DO, every other game was just like a gimmick. What don't I like about it in terms of content? I don't think it's anything I don't like about it. It just didn't really vibe with me. And I guess I'm just picky with the way documentaries are put together. It just didn't work for me as a presentation. But since I know that other people reacted so strongly to it and it really worked for them, I respect it for that. And I think that it has generally a pretty good message. So I think it's just more of an aesthetic critique, honestly. It's not even really like and I also think the religious stuff, I think in terms of the content, the only content that bugged me in it was that some of it was a little bit like reductive about world religions and how those came to be. I always sort of have an issue when people try to say this is how, this is what Jesus really was, or this is what Buddha really was, and here's the real explanation for why these religious figures, are in history. I think that it's a guessing game. It's speculation. So that bugged me about it. And I think honestly that's probably what turned me off in general to the presentation. Is so much of it is front loaded with stuff about that, um, and I just didn't. It just didn't work for me in that regard. But I mean, all the stuff about 9/11. A lot of the other stuff in it is great. So I think that
Fatality.
it's it's fine.
Fight.
Yeah, there's been people I've wanted to interview on the podcast, Modus, for sure. We tried to get Greenwald on the podcast multiple times back in the early days of Media Roots Radio. He never bit. Trying to think of some other figures we tried to get on. We tried to get on Kucinich too. Didn't work out when we attempted to do it. It almost did. This was like actually when he was just off of his last presidential run. So it's really early on in the podcast.
Scorpion wins. Fight.
So I'm realizing that Mortal Kombat's probably a little too much on the hard side to be playing while I'm doing this. So I think before I leave you guys today, I am gonna switch to a different game. So right now, maybe tell me what games you want me to check out, and I'll be happy to look through the list, see if there's anything else in there. Oh fuck. I really like what Hedges says about religion. You know, I haven't really heard much of him talk about religion. I know that he went to seminary school and he was actually like training to become a priest, a Catholic priest. And you know, I would be interested to see what he has to say about religion now. I know that he's very like anti-evangelical Christian, and he talks a lot about that. And I like what he has to say about that. But at the same time, I feel like maybe his religious views give him a really slanted, biased view on sex work and pornography. His views on that, I think, are very harmful, actually. And I vehemently disagree with Chris Hedges about his perception on that stuff. In all his books, he sneaks in religious propaganda. Interesting. Oh, yeah. Well, no, Obnobs, it's fine. I mean, no one else. I think if you know video games, it's cool. I mean, not everyone in here is going to know all the games, arcade games out. You seem pretty well versed in them, so happy to take more of your suggestions. Let's get in there. Let's see if I can fucking find it. Is the problem? Here, I forgot. This is the way to do it. Luckily, they have this feature on here. Wait, let's see. Indexing mode. Yes. Here we go. Boom. All right. Tekken 3, Francisco Raposo. I have to admit that I very much despise the Tekken games. I hope I'm not offending anyone in here. I understand they're very beloved, but I will probably never play this on this channel just because I absolutely suck at it and I don't like it. Unbuttered toast. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's generally true. As much as he actually has done good original research, it does seem like everything goes back to Israel or the Mossad. And I find that unfortunate. I think there's a lot of tunnel vision at work there. But, and he's tweeted some weird, I mean, he's put some stuff on social media that makes it appear that he is anti-Semitic. So that's a big problem, I think. And I think especially when you're dabbling in that kind of territory, you have to take measures to not accidentally be perceived as an anti-Semite. I think that's actually important. So, Hedges is an ordained minister, Sandy Daly said. I had no idea. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, propaganda. I mean, I think that him drawing that line is just, it's not his line to draw. I mean, hardcore porn, like the porn where it's like rough sex. I mean, he basically does not agree or cannot get on board with the concept that that is consensual, or that it's like fully consensual. I mean, in kink culture, there are plenty of people who engage in rough sex all the time in their own private bedrooms. Um, so I think his perception on that kind of pornography is very biased as well. But I mean, at the same time, there probably are some very fucked up people in the porn industry that exploit people. I mean, there's already plenty of examples of that. There is already, like even locally here, kink.com is one of the most popular porn companies in the United States. And James Dean, an actor for kink.com, he was accused of rape and sexual assault by multiple women, several of them actual porn stars. So as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, this company's going to fire him. They're going to release some kind of public apology. But instead, what happened is a bunch of people in the industry defended him and ignored it. And that really bothered me. So, I don't think we've actually had an actual Me Too moment happen and fully take float in the porn industry. But I think in that instances, it was an opportunity for that company and other people to be like, yeah, this guy's not working with us anymore. He's a rapist. So it bugs me. And I have a hard time even watching anything they put out now because he's in so many of their videos. I mean, I can't, obviously won't even watch anything with his video. Yeah, I don't understand obnobs because your implication, you're saying, because the whole idea of sex being consensual while money is involved doesn't make sense. Well, then you could apply that logic to any form of employment. You could say that it's not consensual to work for a retail food establishment. I mean, to me, that's very flawed logic. You are consenting, you are voluntarily offering your services for payment. Um, I have not yet seen any good argument of why sex work should not be decriminalized and even not be legal. I would like to see one. But this is coming from someone, I also think all hardcore drugs should be legal. I don't even think decriminalization is enough, frankly. Obnobs, but if that's your argument for things being consensual or not, the logic still doesn't hold up. Obnobs is saying, but sex work doesn't produce a commodity like other labor does. I mean, what is your definition of a commodity? Being able to jerk off to porn, to watch someone having sex and to jerk off to it is sort of a result. It could be argued it is some kind of commodity. Maybe not something that's societally favored as a commodity, but it is a service. You have a good point. I don't think work is 100% voluntary. Well, that is, I mean, that's a fair argument. I think that that's a fair argument for sure. So in that context, I think it's worth having a wider discussion about that. But I think singling out sex work as opposed to other kinds of work, I think is problematic, slippery slope. And I do believe strongly that there really is no way of separating sex work from other kinds of work without throwing in some kind of puritanical sort of anti-sex views in there. I really don't think it's possible to do it on a logical basis. So, but I'm willing to be challenged on that. I mean, I would love for someone to mount a coherent sort of debate about that. So here, I'm going to start Aliens now. And I'm probably going to do this until 3. So maybe I'll have time to, play another game. So this game, probably one of the only movie tie-in video games ever made that's good. Like literally. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. There are so many terrible, terrible movie tie-in games throughout history, and I'd say 95% of them are pure garbage, like pretty much unplayable, shitty games that weren't even meant to be played. Really, I mean they're awful. But Aliens is probably one of the first ones that I played. Where I was like, actually, like, damn, this is actually a good game. And one of the other ones that came out not too long afterwards is Terminator 2, the arcade game. It's also pretty good. This game came out in 1989, Obnobs. So here we go. And it has great, great sound effects and music. I mean, it's like some of the best FM synthesis shit you'll ever hear in a video game. It's too bad that Sega Genesis never sounded this good. Because I think this would have created... They made the Sega Genesis really make games feel like a legitimate arcade experience. Had they sounded this good? I mean, this music in this game is fucking excellent. Listen to this shit. James Comey is the one who lost the Epstein tapes? You know, I've been hearing contradictory reports about that. I thought it was James Comey's daughter. I thought it was James Comey's daughter who was like in charge of the district court or something. See, this is the problem. I think, and it's also become it's made it harder for me to quickly have opinions about things, because a lot of these conspiracy narratives or narratives about Epstein or people in general are I get worried that they're right-wing propaganda or like right-wing disinfo. So I have to take a pause sometimes, you know, on especially on something like that and be like, now what's actually really going on here? Did James Comey's daughter really destroy these tapes or act like they got lost? I mean, it takes me a second now. In the past, I would have seen that and been less skeptical and jumped on it and repeated it online. I'm just a little bit more careful about that nowadays. And that might even be, you know, I don't know. Maybe that's just my bias against right-wing media, but yeah, I mean, I am biased against it. When you say Epstein was not running a blackmail op, he was running an intelligence service for the libertine ruling elites. What do you mean by that? What kind of intelligence op do you mean? Because I would imagine somewhere in there that you are actually suggesting that there was some blackmail, which is done for intelligence. So I just wanted you to clarify in what aspect would it be an intelligence op if it didn't involve forms of blackmail or things like that. Well, propaganda, I mean, that's an interesting theory. I mean, I would even go so far as saying that Trump and his people deployed the Pizzagate conspiracy theory in order to completely separate Trump's connections to Epstein, to create so much noise out there about the Democrats and Hillary Clinton and the Clintons being pedophiles that it will make anything that came out about Trump and Epstein seem like small potatoes in the end. And I think actually that's the effect that it's had. I mean, if you look at the timing, even the Trump pussy grabbing tape, people cared about that, you know, for like only a few days because Pizzagate came out like a week after that. So one could make the argument that a lot of these right-wing conspiracy people have been doing a huge service to Donald Trump, helping remove his own history of sexual assault and potential, you know, interest in sex with young women or children by deploying and sort of amplifying Pizzagate to the extent that it went. I've thought that for a long time. And there's a Twitter user named Jimmy Salma who's actually done a great thread breakdown and written a few Medium stories about this. God damn it. I suck, guys. Ancient Aliens had John Podesta on? Did I have him on as like a guest being interviewed? Like in the chair with that guy with the giant hair? Oh fuck, I'm gonna die right here. I guess you're not supposed to let the aliens hang out on the elevator too long. So that's new to me. I didn't realize that. Sorry, guys. Um, Modus operandi. What did I think about Luke from We Are Change running around Epstein Island? I mean, it was amusing, but I don't really think he uncovered anything that newsworthy from it. It was definitely created some good visuals, though. Um, did I listen to the Opperman interview with Hofberg? No. Send it to me on Twitter or DM it to me. I didn't. I like Opperman. I think he does mostly good work. It was actually him who convinced me that Michael Jackson was a pedophile before Finding, was it called Finding Neverland? That new documentary came out. Opperman interviewed a series of different people who had encounters with Michael Jackson that were pretty convincing that there was something, that he was definitely a pedophile. I mean, completely apart from the lawsuit that already happened. And if anyone wants any links to those, I'd be happy to provide them. Shit. I can shoot those. It's useful. Shit. Fuck. Got like a heat-seeking attack on me, fucking asshole. Shit. To concentrate more than I'd like to beat some of these bosses. Yeah, I need to pick I think I need to pick some easier games. Or I just need to get better at games. So, thanks for being patient with me so far. Actually, sucking. Well, I'm trying to talk to you guys about politics here. Oh, God. God, I'm playing so much worse than I did yesterday. It's hilarious how many different variations of the aliens there are in this movie. Because I think this predated Alien 3, definitely. I mean, this game did. And Alien 3, of course, introduced like the bull alien. Or like the dog alien or whatever. The one that like runs really fast. It's really tiny. I think, I mean, in the movie Aliens, there was only technically two different types of aliens. There was the queens and then the queen and then the regular kind of alien. And this, there's like 50 different variations. Oh, this part's rad. Check this out. This reminds you of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Turtles in Time. It's that wrecking ball that comes down. You know, it's funny. I actually played this game in the arcade when I was a kid before I actually saw the movie. So I remember looking at this mech suit and thinking, well, that's really cool. I wish Ripley had that in the movie. And I didn't realize it was actually based on the sequel Aliens that I had never seen as a kid. Yeah, this triple missile is pretty cool. Wasn't there only one alien in the movie Alien 3? Like, literally? I thought there wasn't even more than one. They tried to sort of bring it back to the way the original was, but most people ended up hating it. You know, if I'm being honest, I actually like how the Alien 3 starts by just showing you almost like a snuff scene of like all the characters from the first movie who had died. Very dark and disturbing, and I think maybe it's too dark and disturbing, and it sort of leaves you feeling empty as a movie. And spoilers if you haven't seen it, and it ends with Alien 3 ends with Ripley committing suicide in a pool of molten lead because she has an alien inside of her. It's quite a fucked up movie actually. But it was David Fincher's first movie. I think it was his first movie, and he did it like after he had directed some Nine Inch Nails videos at the time or something. So the movie has like this kind of like Nine Inch Nails industrial, grimy feel to it. But it doesn't really have any of the cool politics that Aliens had. And I actually voted Aliens quite high on my list of political movies, sci-fi political movies, because I feel that it has a very sort of anti-corporate message about how these human employees, these more blue-collar employees of this company, are expendable, and they send basically a corporate minder out to make sure that they bring a specimen of the alien home. You know. Kind of reminds me of Contra, the style of boss right here. It's funny because Contra, another Konami game, was a huge ripoff of Aliens and Predator. I mean, the characters in the game are almost meant to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. Like if you look at the box artwork. So it's kind of interesting that whoever owns Aliens, like 20th Century Fox, would give Konami the rights to it, even though they had already sort of made a game that was a blatant ripoff of Alien. So I mean, if you remember playing Contra, the first one, even for NES, a shitload of the stuff in it are just like rip-offs of the movie Alien and like imagery from Alien, like face huggers. Even like the aliens in the game look like the xenomorphs from Alien. You know, it's a really hard movie for me to rewatch is Alien 4 Resurrection. That one I have a really hard time with. Especially because it was directed by a guy who made, previous to that, two amazing movies. One of them called City of Lost Children and the other one called Delicatessen. This is Aliens, for people who are just joining this chat. This is an arcade game from 1989 made by Konami, Aliens. One of the only good movie franchise video games ever made, arguably. It's a classic, nice, solid shooter. Kind of structured more like a beat 'em up. I like certain aspects of Alien Resurrection a lot. Certain aspects I don't like. It's weird to think Joss Whedon wrote that script, though, of Alien 4. No, this is not on ZSNES. It's on an arcade emulator. It's arcade only. For some reason, they never released this. This is one of those other really good arcade games that they never released on a console system. There are a lot of good. I mean, that's kind of the point of why I'm playing so many of these. Is I'm actually going to play stuff that wasn't on consoles. Because I feel like a lot of people probably haven't seen a lot of these games. So I just want to keep it a little bit more interesting. I mean, there's so many, especially older games that were never released on consoles. I mean, anything like anything released like pre-Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo, most of the arcade translations were really crappy anyways. I mean, because they were dealing with 8-bit systems like Nintendo, Sega Master System. Even the original Donkey Kong, for example, was the port on the original NES is like kind of shitty. It's not really like the original Donkey Kong in terms of the aesthetics. You need to play the original Donkey Kong on a MAME emulator or a classic arcade virtual thing like on WiiWare or something like that, virtual console. But yeah, in general, I would say some of the best arcade games ever never got a proper home translation, with the exception of like Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat. And, those aren't even totally arcade accurate. They lost the source code of Donkey Kong. Interesting. Yes, I ran HO3K. Yes, that Spider-Man game. I actually have it on here. The problem is it doesn't run fast enough. It's on this series of ROMs, but it runs pretty slowly. So, yeah, that's a bummer. Because that game is amazing. It's actually one of the first like superhero property games that looked amazing. It has great animation. Yeah, it's interesting you say that. So you saying all the ports, every port is written from the ground up. That makes me wonder why, like, what's very fascinating to me about that is the ports of Double Dragon and Contra for the original NES. They look graphically way worse than the arcade game. I mean, they're, pretty pathetic graphically and compared to the original arcade games. But somehow they both play way better and way smoother. The gameplay is more dialed in. The action feels more smooth. It's a strange thing to me. And in fact, actually, I think I mentioned this on the first podcast, but the first Castlevania game ever made was also an arcade called Haunted Castle by Konami. Terrible game. Absolutely terrible. The gameplay is awful. But they took the same gameplay from it, more or less, and modeled it into a really fun Nintendo game called Castlevania. So Konami sort of has a history of their arcade versions being inferior gameplay-wise to their home ports, which is sort of a strange thing. And Double Dragon wasn't made by Konami. That was made by Technos, I think. But, I mean, it's an interesting thing. So, basically, I mean, they've improved an arcade game on a home console release. So, I would much prefer, if it comes to playing those games, I would always prefer to play the home console releases to the arcades. I mean, even Double Dragon 2, I tried playing that last night on the arcade, and it's just not as good as the Nintendo version. The Nintendo version just feels smoother. It feels like the gameplay is more dialed in. It's got better controls, a little faster feeling. Initial D in an arcade. No, I don't know what that game is. Maybe we can play that next time. What kind of game is that, Bird Worldist? God, I'm terrible at this game. I know this is embarrassing to watch, you guys. What the fuck is happening here? So I have to That's weird. Okay, so when I shoot them enough times, they get big, and then I can kill them. Some interesting pixel scaling going on there. Jesus Christ, are you fucking kidding me? Japanese drifting game. I'll have to pull that up. If it's from like if it's before the 2000s, then I'd probably have it on here. If it's 3D, if it's like polygonal graphics, it's probably not going to run very well on the system. Even some of the old games that are polygonal, like hard driving, race driving, stun runner, they don't run very good on here. They'll run, but they just run choppy. That was a great FM synth explosion. It's 3D. Yeah, I probably won't be able to run it on here. But I mean, I could play some Switch games for you guys on here if you're tired of seeing like old classic arcade games. I will at some point probably hook up like Super Mario Maker 2. There's also a Mortal Kombat mod called Mortal Kombat Project. It's for MAME. Or no, sorry, not MAME, Mugen. Mugen is a fighting game engine where you can basically make your own fighting game. And people who are fans of this platform have managed to recreate the Mortal Kombat trilogy gameplay in Mugen. So what they've done is they basically made a clone of Mortal Kombat trilogy with all the original characters from Mortal Kombat trilogy, plus a bunch of new ones that people on the internet have made. And it's pretty goddamn impressive. Yeah, I saw the Trap House episode about Mayor Pete. Their analysis looked good. I didn't actually listen to it, but I had read some other stuff before their episode came out, sort of that laid out his mysterious history and what he might have actually been up to in Afghanistan, or I think it was Afghanistan is where he served. It definitely seems very suspicious, and in fact, there's an Obama-like quality to him where it does seem like he was being groomed by intelligence agencies like very early on in his political career, to the point where maybe someone even suggested to him, hey dude, you should join the army because it's going to look really good for you later when you're running for office. I mean, it does seem to me very calculated. I don't get any authentic vibes off of him at all, even though he's a good talker. So this is a little harder than it needs to be. It's funny, this boss though actually has more of like a strategic pattern than some of the other bosses on here. Just a little slower to beat, I guess. Fucking shit. Oh, that FM synth, oh, I love it. I know, I do. No, it's true. Crystal Inc. loves him. That's actually news to me. I haven't really seen much in that direction. You know, it's weird. Bill Crystal has been really carefully choosing not to speak on certain really crucial things right now, like Iran, for example. Really amusing to me that he was just tweeting about totally unrelated shit for like the last 2 weeks. He's more concerned about impeachment than he is about anything else. His whole thing is he started like a PAC or like some kind of weird cutout organization called Trump and the Rule of Law, implying that Trump is like constantly breaking the law. Or no, I'm sorry, it's called Republicans for the Rule of Law. So it's basically the whole idea of this cutout organization that Bill Crystal has is to make it so that Republicans will turn against Trump. And so far, it doesn't seem to have really worked at all. I mean, you would think Tom Cotton, at the very least, who is Bill Crystal's puppet, would be ready to flip. That's going to be an interesting wild card, I think. I actually think that's possible. Someone like him could be sort of stealth, taking neocon orders, and will be ready to turn against Trump when the time comes. This is annoying, man. Is this the last boss? Maybe it is. Maybe I'll actually beat this game for you guys. Adam G, you showed your mom a very heavy agenda. She was able to sit through all 7.5 hours of it. Your mom's awesome. She has a pretty long attention span. I like your mom. I want to meet that mom. Oh, part one. Well, part one's even more abstract than the rest of them, so I'm surprised that she was able to sit through part one. Sometimes I'll actually tell casual, people who don't watch very many documentaries or films to start with part two, because part two of a very heavy agenda, I think, is structured a lot more like a traditional movie or documentary. It would, someone who's watched a Michael Moore documentary before would be able to watch it. I feel like part one is more like if you're really into like Adam Curtis and like abstract found footage stuff, you'll dig it. So that's pretty impressive that your mom was able to sit through the whole thing. I don't think Iran did either. I mean, I think they would be crazy to. It doesn't make any sense to. I would be maybe willing to believe Iran would have done something like that if it made any sense. Why would they have done it? It's very, very odd. Very odd. I don't think Iran admitted to it yet. No, I don't think they did. I mean, I admitted to it. Not to my knowledge. If someone could show me that somehow Iran admitted to doing that, that would be interesting. But they just actually invited in investigators to investigate it. So that would be a crazy move on their part if they invited in international investigative teams and they'd done it. And then at the end of it, they're just like, the teams found out that Iran did it. And they're just like, whoops. That would be surprising to me. Yeah, I mean, Grant suggests something that was the initial thought that came to my mind, is that somehow it was a cyber attack, either a backdoor hack, something like that. I mean, under the Trump administration already, Trump actually mocked a failed missile launch test by Iran that a lot of people in the press, including like generic neoliberal people, were like, this seems like it could have been some kind of cyber attack by the U.S. government on Iran to make it so that their missile launch would actually like turn around and like fire back. I think it like killed several people. And that wasn't the first time either. Their missile launch test, I think under the Obama administration, a similar thing happened where they did a test and it sort of the missile came back down and crashed on some of the military figures that were there at the test. I think it was Boeing having shitty planes that kill people. I mean, that's possible too, but at the same time, propaganda, there is several videos which in and of themselves are strange. Why did people take these videos showing something hitting the plane? So it's not like MH17 where it's a total mystery about how the plane went down. If these videos are to be believed, they show an object being shot towards the plane on takeoff and it going down. It's very, very odd. That's what's different about this situation and other similar sort of mysterious plane crashes in the past. I agree. AutoCuck 8000 says there's zero incentive for Iran to shoot it. I mean, obviously. Why the hell would they shoot it down? It's super, super weird. Oh, shit. I didn't even realize that I didn't realize there's a mini boss. Uncle Buttered Toast, could it be like a military coup since Soleimani died? I mean, I would be really surprised. Oh, cool. I get to get in one of these motherfucking things. Cool, motherfucker. I'll fuck you up. Let's fuck up this queen. Why does a queen almost look like a robot? That's weird. Are you fucking kidding me? So this thing's on invincible. So what does this thing even do? I'm just going to button mash, guys, because I want to talk politics with you guys before I sign off here. I have to go at 3, so I'm just going to button mash and beat this motherfucking boss really quick. I don't care how many times I die. This is so cheap what I'm doing right now. I know. I gotta up my video game chops. Other live streaming people probably watch this and be like, why is this the suckiest fucking video game player online streaming stuff? Am I supposed to like push her into the airlock over here? Let's see. I think maybe I'm supposed to do that. But it looks like she's taking on damage too, so let's see. Oh yeah, now it's opening, of course. See, exactly like the movie. How many times do you play a game where the final boss is actually like the last scene in the movie? I mean, besides like Empire Strike, I can't imagine very many other video games that have done that. I know the Star Wars games for Super Nintendo did that for the most part. The aliens' breeding ground has been destroyed and the last of their flung into timeless space. You have also survived. Congratulations. That was amusing. Okay, well, we did it, guys. We played through an entire game with your help. So thanks, Obnobs, for the suggestion to play Aliens. All right. That was it. That was Aliens. So let's. I'll get back into the chat and just hang out with you guys before I have to go here. Robbie, watch A Very British Coup. Never heard of it. Is it a documentary? Tell me a little bit about it. Oz Whistle says, I'm always suspicious of internet, quote, personalities, unquote, pushing single issue stuff. It needs funding, and that's never mentioned. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that. If you mean like people who decide only to stick to foreign policy, or people who decide to stick to only, like Flint, Michigan. Let me know what you mean by single issue stuff and why you're suspicious of people pushing that stuff. I just want clarification on that. Oh, that's sad news. I just saw that. Sad to learn, anytime anybody passes away, but someone in the chat just said, R.I.P. Neil Peart. And I was just like, what? I had to go check to see that it was true. Yeah, rest in peace, Neil. That's a bummer. I went through a little Rush period in my musical upbringing. I got really into prog rock, and I never really thought much of Rush. And then I think I don't know if it was maybe like 6 years ago, I started checking out their stuff more deeply, and I got into a lot of it. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, some of it's pretty corny, but it is pretty great. Tom Sawyer. Oddly, the first time I ever heard that track was the opening to the Primus record "Suck on This." They actually like start the album by tricking you into thinking it's going to be the song Tom Sawyer by Rush. And that was sort of my first introduction to Rush. And I remember later hearing Rush, Tom Sawyer, and being like, oh, wow, that's the Primus reference. That's so weird. I sampled that song and a couple other Rush tracks in my album Antique Electronic Music Part 3, an Antique Electronic Synthesizer Grades Part 3, which is an album constructed of only samples of electronic music sounds from pre-1985. And Rush actually did use a lot of synthesizers in their music, and so I sampled them in that record. I sampled some of Neil Peart's drum riffs, because there was some synth going over some of those riffs that like I chopped up and turned into beats. Interesting. I never heard of this film. I need to check it out. Propagander says that this film trilogy is about a socialist PM trying to kick the U.S. out of the U.K. and denuclearize. I'm assuming it's some kind of fictional trilogy. Doesn't sound like it's a documentary. White Seed, absolutely correct. Alien vs. Predator is an amazing arcade game. I believe it's also by Konami. It's kind of almost a follow-up to Aliens. I mean, it has very similar gameplay. It's odd in the sense that they actually have the name of Arnold Schwarzenegger's character from Predator in it as a playable character, although he doesn't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, which makes me think there was some legal issues there, where Arnold Schwarzenegger did not want his likeness being used in the game, but he had probably no control over his character's name from Predator being used. So that's for another episode. I'll definitely play that one as well. And yeah, I guess this is where I'm going to leave you guys off here today. Um, and just remember that my entire YouTube channel has been demonetized. A very heavy agenda can no longer take donations or super chats because of too many copyright strikes I got on my channel. Um, and it's a bummer. I tried to appeal it multiple times through YouTube. They didn't allow it. So if you want to show me some love in some kind of monetary fashion, you can do so at patreon.com/Media Roots Radio. That is sort of equally split up between me and my sister who do the podcast. Or you can donate directly to me on Patreon at patreon.com/Robbie Martin. If you want, you can also send me PayPal donations directly at videohoax@hotmail.com. AutoCuck8000 says, come to Twitch. That's my plan. That was actually my plan today, and it got totally fucking derailed because I couldn't figure it out in time. So if someone wants to help me online figure out how to simultaneously stream to YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Periscope, I would love to start doing that because I don't really have any loyalty or specific interest in only being on YouTube. I mean, especially after they've demonetized me, it's pretty infuriating. So, I don't support them as a company, and I have no love for them. And even if I did have monetization ability on my channel, I would probably discourage people to donate through PayPal or to donate through YouTube because they take a huge chunk of it, and it's very dependent on making sure you follow these very stringent rules of speech, even what you're allowed to say politically. So I think I'm just going to say whatever I want on this channel. I'm going to try not to put out porn as my only limitation on here because I know that will be an instant banning, and it's not really like a passion of mine to force you to watch porn on this channel. So anything short of that, I'm not going to hold back on. I'm going to say whatever. So because I really have nothing to lose. If they take this YouTube channel down, big whoop. I'll just start another one. And if you guys like this show enough, I'll probably will eventually just start a channel for this show to separate it from normally what I do politically. Unbuttered Toast says, "Are your movies on Vimeo?" Yes, they are. You could go to a Very Heavy Agenda. Do a Google search for A Very Heavy Agenda and Vimeo. You'll find it there. I don't know the exact URL where you can go watch it. I have other documentaries on YouTube actually right now that are free to watch. I have American Anthrax. It's a 45-minute mini documentary about the 2001 anthrax attacks. I also made a sort of really basic found footage presentation that's about 3 hours long called American Bisque that came out, I think it came out in 2012 or 2013, all about sort of the Obama era. It takes you from the Vietnam era all the way to the Obama era to sort of catalog all the war crimes, and it's set to music. So you can check that out on YouTube. It's called American Bisque. So hope you guys had a good day. I hope it's not too stressful, bracing for a potential war here. Just don't forget that, it's always a good idea to incorporate some kind of self-soothing, bring some comfort to your life, some methods of de-stressing into your life. You don't have to carry the weight on your shoulders and, think it's your burden to try to stop this war. I mean, it's up to all of us as individuals collectively to help stop it, but you're not going to be of any use to the cause of stopping this war and being involved politically if you're really stressed out and driving yourself into a really depressed place on a daily basis. And I think mental health is very important, and I just want people to remember, make sure to take care of yourself occasionally. It's a really, really important. So thank you, everybody. I had a great time today, and promise next time I'll get better at video games for you guys. And yes, someone asked, we'll see you next week. yes, I mean, you'll probably actually see me over the weekend doing this again. I'm going to be doing this hopefully at least every other day. So check it out. Follow me on Twitter at Fluorescent Grey. It's where I'll be announcing these. And thank you. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.